All right, what's up, everybody? Sorry for the technical delays, but we are back and we have changed hosts. I am now hosting. I am Brian, co-founder of Occupy Fantasy, joined by Chuck Silver, recent 20K winner in the DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest, typically hosting these streams, and we're going to talk through some playoff best ball drafts and strategy over on Underdog Fantasy. Chuck, what's up, man? How you feeling this week?
Feel pretty good. Ready to draft some playoff best ball teams. I've gotten a couple dozen in, but it's really difficult. Feel like the variance is much higher, even higher than the high variance from the regular season. But I also think it's the biggest edge in best ball. So pretty excited to see the final standings next week. But we can still find some edges if we're guessing on certain seed finishes and stuff like that.
Dude, I think the edges are some of the biggest in any sort of sports betting fantasy that you can possibly have. As I was talking to you earlier in the week, there are people in these drafts on Underdog for playoffs that are basically drawing dead after two picks to win the top prize. And as you've said on these streams many times, as we've talked about, your goal is to win these contests. So if you're drafting to where you might advance out of round one, but you have no chance of winning the entire thing, that really helps the odds for the rest of us who are drafting optimally, which we will talk about here in a second. But have you been seeing the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes no sense because in the smaller buy-ins on Underdog, the min cash is just your buy-in back, so you get
Right.
nothing extra for getting to the second round. And then in the big contest, the Gauntlet, min cash is actually losing $5. What's nice about most of these contests is to advance, so we don't have to be as weird with taking late round guys that probably are going to get eliminated in the first round just to try to get to the second round. I know that one of the mittens they released recently, they did change it to one advances, but I
Yeah.
think they put it on like the contest front page, so it's pretty easy to tell which one's which.
Yeah, for sure. And if you guys have questions, this is a live show. We'll talk about some strategy and maybe do a couple drafts here because they do go quickly, maybe 30, 45 minutes or so. So if you have questions throughout, let us know in the live chat. And if you're watching this after the fact, which I know many of you will, go ahead and comment on the video and we will get back to you on strategy. Let's see here. So, Chuck, right now I have up the NFL playoff picture. And this is just
Mhm.
from the New York Times. And there are various sources, 538, whichever source out there. It gives you a rough estimate of likelihood for teams to make the playoffs, get the bye, win the division, go to the Super Bowl, et cetera, et cetera. And the first thing that sticks out to me, Chuck, and I don't know if you've been noticing this, is everyone, at least the last 2 weeks, have been, and especially this week even, despite the odds changing, everyone has been drafting Buccaneers players late in drafts, but no one is drafting Packers players, yet the Packers have a higher chance of making the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I noticed that. You can get a full Packers stack for free, and most drafts. I mean, I don't even know if I've seen a Packers player drafted other than ones that I've taken myself,
Yeah,
and
right.
so
Same.
that's definitely an edge because Tampa Bay is getting eliminated in the first round. I mean, the odds are they're going to get eliminated in the first round, and I mean Packers too, but just a bigger edge advancing if that's what you're trying to do with your last couple picks.
Dude, it's crazy. It's so crazy. So, I mean, we have teams that are locked in: 49ers, Rams, Lions, Eagles, Cowboys, Chiefs, Browns, Ravens, Dolphins, and almost Bills. I don't want to jinx it for Bills fans out there, but 95% according to the New York Times probability. So we pretty much know who. And then it really comes down to the one question I have for you is, Chuck, when we're drafting these late teams, yes, we can get 68, 70% odds Packers in our final picks. How crazy do we want to get? Do we want to take shots on CJ Stroud and Nico Collins, who are roughly 50-50 to make the playoffs? Do we want to even dive deeper to Pittsburgh and, God forbid, Atlanta and the Saints? My thought was the odds are they're one and done anyways, and they don't have very many impactful players that will put up huge scores to win you the entire thing. But I thought if Houston maybe wins a couple games, I could see Stroud and especially Nico Collins putting up big enough scores to be worthwhile.
Well, so it just makes me think about last year. I made one finals team, and the whole key was so it was a full Eagle stack with one Kansas City player, and they were the number one seeds, and so kind of similar to Baltimore, San Francisco this year. The whole key was drafting Jaguars in the very last rounds. They were free, and they ended up winning the first game. All went off, helped that team advance. But we also got those players to play in the second round, which is really important. And so talking about the playoff odds here, I think one of the things that we want to focus on is conference finals odds because it was something I heard on another show. But if you can have more live players just in that conference finals than your other, pod mates, then you're just at such a big advantage because it's mostly 1 out of 10 advancing out of the conference finals to the Super Bowl. So the odds are low. But if you can have eight and sometimes even 10 players available in the conference finals versus a lot of other people who might only have the 5 or 6 that they plan for the Super Bowl. That's already a big advantage right there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So most of my drafts, I've been planning around just having enough players or more players in the Super Bowl, but obviously you have to get there as well, and I think that may be one of my shortcomings. Anything else you want to talk about here before we jump into a couple drafts and just fire some live bullets and talk about it?
Um, no, we can get into it when we see the ADP rankings. I did want to mention, I think the Eagles are probably one of the bigger edges to draft right now. They're the team falling the most that I think. I mean, percentage wise, I'm not sure, but I feel like they have one of the better odds to make the Super Bowl. And AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, they were going from first round picks to now sometimes falling into third, fourth
Yeah.
round. And so I think that's and it seems like it's a lot easier to draft with a full NFC stack and then draft your auxiliary pieces from the AFC, Kansas City, Buffalo, Miami, Cleveland,
Yes.
Jacksonville. And so I'm trying to go that route as much as I can.
No, I'm with you. We're on the same page for sure. Let me pull up Underdog here. I'm going to hop in a mitten if I can. The mitten 3, the $5 one. If you guys can't see this properly, just let me know and I'll increase or decrease the size. Let's see, $5. So the one area I'm struggling with, Chuck, is the number of quarterbacks to draft. This is my first year doing this. I haven't really seen a reason to draft 2 quarterbacks outside of obviously first round buy in Lamar or Brock Purdy if you draft those guys. But how much of a roster spot are you wasting versus how much safety are you getting in having a better chance of advancing by having 2 quarterbacks? What are your thoughts, and if you know what the optimal strategy is?
And so I agree. Most of the time, I'm only drafting a second quarterback if I have literally Lamar or Brock Purdy. Even if I have the other San Francisco, Baltimore players, and I don't have their quarterback, it doesn't really matter. I'm just whatever quarterback I draft is usually okay. This team is making the Super Bowl. I draft Dak kind of late. This is a Dak team now. Cowboys are making the Super Bowl in this draft, I guess. Um, but it was something interesting where do you think it's possible to advance a San Francisco or Baltimore stack without having another quarterback on your roster out of the first round? I know that this contest is 1 out of 6, but maybe in the other ones where 2 advance.
Yeah, I did that by accident, and you and I were talking about it off stream. So I think it is possible, especially with the 2 out of 6. 1 out of 6, it feels less likely. You really need a lot of the games to bust, or maybe. Actually, I don't know. It feels unlikely, especially at the quarterback position where you pretty much need 15 plus points, and that's going to be a big difference maker if you don't have that. So I think you probably need a quarterback score in round one.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think like even if you hit the perfect nuts in round one, like let's say you get Tyreek Hill and I don't know Stephon Diggs, and they both put up 30 points. No one else gets really close to 20, and then you get the ideal running back. Then maybe it's possible, but it's not an outcome I want to bank on. Now, if you do manage to advance that team, you have a pretty good advantage because, like I said, you're going to have a ton. You're going to just have more available players than the rest of your pods, but
Right.
it's a tough one. And then another thing that we talked about was how do we draft San Francisco stacks because it's basically impossible to get the full stack with Purdy, CMC, Ayuk, and Debo. And so back to your 2 quarterback question, something I've been doing a little bit if I'm getting like I had a draft earlier where I got Debo and Ayuk with the
Yep.
5-6 pick,
Same. Yep.
and I took 2 stacks from the AFC. I think I took a Miami stack and then Cleveland stack. And while it might be unlikely, that's one situation that I have taken 2 quarterbacks where I'm still banking on San Francisco to make the Super Bowl. But I know I'm not going to get Brock Purdy, and so I'm just trying to have 2 shots from the AFC to make the Super Bowl.
No, I love that. And just really quickly, I had the 2 pick here. I went CD Lamb. We can discuss the merits of that in a little bit here. But I think especially if you get Ayuk Samuel or some rare 3 combo where it's hard to get that combination in general. I like double stacking on the same roster because you're not going to get that opportunity very often. So why not double the opportunity on the same lineup with a rare San Francisco combo? Because you're rarely, very rarely going to get 3 of their core players, and so you have to figure how does this win if only 2. If San Francisco makes the Super Bowl, what does the optimal lineup look like? And that's where it starts to get a little fuzzy for me.
Yeah, and the most common 3 stack I do see with San Francisco is CMC in the one spot, and then Purdy and Kittle
Yep.
with their next 2 picks in rounds 2 and round 3. And like I said, I saw one perfect 4 stack from the Niners, but that's just an impossible thing. I don't even if you did 300 drafts, I don't think that's going to come up again.
Right. All right. I'm gonna go for a Dallas Baltimore stack here. So I'm gonna take Zay Flowers here. I've seen, and this is where I'm talking about where people are kind of drawing dead, where Hurts is still available. I've seen people draft CD and Hurts, and just it doesn't make much sense, right, Chuck?
No, no.
Okay, so I'm not crazy. Okay, so CD and Zay. What I really like about Baltimore, Chuck, is they spread their scoring around. It's similar to. I'm trying to think if there's any other teams that's similar to on this in this playoffs slate, but like you could draft Bateman, Odell late, and they could be the optimal scorer in the Super Bowl, right? That's not out of the question, which is why it's so easy to stack Baltimore here as a favorite with a bye.
Yeah, absolutely. And then even going off that, if to complete the Dallas stack, Ferguson's going pretty late, and then even
Yep.
if you miss out on Ferguson, Cooks, Pollard, you can still grab Gallup, and like he's more powerful than a lot of the other, I don't know, wide receiver threes, I guess, that people are drafting towards the end of drafts. I mean, one touchdown from one of these end of draft guys, especially in the Super Bowl or conference finals, that could be enough to advance or move up a few spots in the rankings.
For sure. So I took Pollard here, right? And it's a little bit above ADP, right? But he's not going to come back around to me more than likely. My question is whether Pollard would have come back or not. What is your next step here, right? Let's say you're drafting Dallas and Baltimore, and there's a little bit of a gap where the next group of guys you're drafting for that stack are ADPs round 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? Rounds 3 and 4, what types of players are you taking? Are you taking players from the opposite conference? Are you looking at positions? That's where I think, for me at least, it's a little there's a little bit of uncertainty on what the optimal approach is.
Well, so you already took Zay Flowers, and you mentioned the other Ravens guys, but I think Isaiah Likely is going way too late
Agreed.
for his chances of playing in the Super Bowl. And so I kind of like just completing the Dallas stack here with Dak and then taking Isaiah Likely. And then if Jake Ferguson or Cooks are available, I'll take them. If not, then I'll probably try and grab another player who I guess Dallas could reasonably play in the first round. I think I had this exact start earlier, and I went Dak and Jalen Waddle next.
Okay.
And I don't remember if I still got Likely, but completing the stack is usually my number one priority.
So even if you're taking guys over, like Dak is, let's say, 7 spots ahead of ADP, you're still taking him because by pure projection or whatever the hell these rankings are by, right? Like Rashi Rice may be a quote unquote better projection, better pick, but you're not playing for that outcome, right? You want to complete the stack no matter really what the ADP is to an extent.
Well, so I don't mind taking the risk that Dak comes back to us because, like, picking up a player like Rashi Rice, like that's great. Now you have another possible Super Bowl combination. But if you miss out on Dak, if someone snipes you, then this draft is just you're kind of drawing dead.
For sure. So I mean, I'm gonna take Dak here, and I still like the idea of Rashi Rice or Pacheco coming around the turn here. So let's see. I'm gonna take Dak. So we have Dak, Pollard, CeeDee Lamb with Zay Flowers. Going to grab another Baltimore player here in a little bit, but
Uh, well, one thing I was going to say, can you open up the draft board?
oh yeah, my bad.
Because since you were right before the turn, if this guy, because I'm assuming he has Brock Purdy, right?
He does
Okay,
not.
so he had Jalen Hurts, and so I would have taken the risk that Dak would have came back to us, and I probably would have taken Rashi Rice there still, if that's the player that you had your eye on.
So we have similar thoughts, but I've been in too many of these drafts where dummies take double quarterbacks where it doesn't make sense. And he did take an AFC quarterback, so it makes some sense here. But I would not have been shocked if if a quarterback was taken there. So yeah, I mean Rashi Rice here is really nice, right? So yeah, past
Yeah,
ADP.
and that guy kind of did what we were talking about at the beginning of the video with you miss out on Brock Purdy, but we still think the Niners are going to make the Super Bowl.
Yeah, true.
Wait, oh no, he threw. Did he throw his draft? Yeah, he threw his draft. Never mind. I take
Yeah,
that back. Not Jalen Hurts is not the quarterback. I mean, if it was Mahomes or Josh Allen, that would have made sense. But
right. Because
no,
what?
that's not.
How does his lineup win? It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's just it's playing to advance and then maybe get to the conference finals. But even here's the thing: half the teams in the Super Bowl in the final round are going to be drawing dead
Yeah,
before the game even starts.
right.
They're not going to be able to field a roster, or their players are going to be so weak that there's just nothing. There's almost no outcome where they can win the contest.
It's pretty crazy. Like there, I don't think you can really say that about any other contest, DFS, sports betting, fantasy, right? Like where you get to the finale, where the biggest prizes are, and half the teams are don't even have a chance of winning first.
Mhm.
You really can't say that at all at this stage of where we are in this space.
And like back to like Gallup or even players like MVS, even like Noah Gray. If you have that fifth player, if you have the exact same four players as a bunch of other people in the finals, but you have that fifth player, Gallup or Noah Gray,
And they
whatever,
score
and they
1 point.
Yeah, they score 1 point. You have such an advantage over them, and then if they end up scoring a touchdown, it's like it's leverage over all the other teams that have the Rashi Rices who maybe doesn't score a touchdown that
Yeah.
game or whatever.
No, totally. No, we're on the same page here. So, talk to me about the Rams, right? Because Kyron's going kind of early. People are drafting Puka and Cooper Cup. Obviously, massive ceilings in the first round. Questionable odds of making it to the second round and beyond. Those are guys I'm on the fence on when and how to take them if they're likely one and done but high scores.
So with the standings right now, I'm pretty sure the Rams would be playing the Lions if the season ended today. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
And so I don't mind taking Kyron and Puka and Cooper Cup, but if I'm doing that, so we talked about we want as many players in the conference finals as possible. And so if I already have any Dallas players, or if I have Amon Ra or maybe Sam Laporta, then I'm probably going to avoid the Rams and try to go with another stack. But I mean, there's a reasonable chance that the Rams make the conference finals, and having those guys available in the conference finals are very powerful. But I do think that they're getting overdrafted, and people are kind of just overvaluing their likely contribution over the course of the playoffs.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, yeah, dude, we're on the same page completely. All right, let's see here. I also like. I don't know if it'll come back to me. I really like my secondary stacks coming. If I have an AFC, sorry, if I have an NFC 4-man, 5-man stack, um, which reminds me, I should probably take the Dallas player here. Okay, we'll go with Cooks. Um, I like Cleveland on the AFC side, and let me ask you this. So I guess there are two ways here, right? You mega stack the Super Bowl, whether it's like three, four, five guys from one team, two, three, four, five guys from the other team. That's probably too excessive, but two, three, four guys. Or you do like a 4-2-2, right? Where you have four guys from NFC and then a two-man mini stack from AFC, another two-man mini stack from AFC to give yourself two chances they could meet in the conference championship. Is that the right way of thinking? And are you finding yourself building one way or the other?
I mean, for me, the ideal build is like this Cowboy stack: four Cowboys, and then let's say two Baltimore, two KC, and two Cleveland Browns or two Jacksonville, something like that. So we have three possible combinations to play in the Super Bowl. However unlikely, Jacksonville or the Browns are going to be.
Right.
Or you said 4-2-2, and then maybe a couple one-offs if we have San Francisco or Baltimore and we need help advancing out of the first round. Just getting those teams to the second round is powerful. And so, like I said, we want as many players as possible playing in the conference championship. But I feel like people are still not drafting Baltimore and San Francisco optimally. And so just
Agreed.
getting those stacks there seems like it's going to be pretty powerful.
I, I keep saying I agree because it seems so obvious to us who
Yeah.
as drafters, but clearly the field is not doing it that way. And sometimes you will get in the draft, right? Where you'll see like three or four drafters drafting the right way, and you're like, oh, this makes it easy. I know I'm never going to get sniped, right? Like they're going to draft their guys, my guys are going to fall to me, and it makes it nice for everyone's kind of a gentleman's agreement there. But I think I'd prefer obviously when people draft suboptimally.
Yeah, and so that's something that we want for regular season playoff, right? We want people to make mistakes, draft 4 or 5 quarterbacks, whatever. But in playoff best ball, we really would prefer people to just stay in their lanes and not,
Yeah.
snipe our stacks because I don't know. I'm sure there's a thought process like, oh, I'm not going to let this guy, get his perfect stack, so I'm going to snipe him even though I'm drawing dead now, and that's dumb.
Right.
Um, and so
Yes, it is.
uh, in the gauntlet, the $25 buy-in, you'll see people stay in their lanes a lot more. I imagine more people in there are more experienced drafters versus the $3 and $5
Sure.
buy-ins.
Sure. 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 Definitely. So I took Jerome Ford here. So now I have two running backs. Is two running backs enough in this format, or do you need one more? You think, even though you only have to start one?
I think two is enough. I would say it just depends on how iffy you are on Tony Pollard.
Well, I think we're all very iffy on Tony Pollard's potential production. Let's see here. Other running backs that make sense now. So Justice Hill, we could go with a three-man combo for Baltimore. Does that make sense? Right? You have four Dallas, three Baltimore, and that to me that makes a ton of sense. Gives you just more combos in the championship if you make it.
Yeah, I'm not against it at all. Especially, like we just said about Tony Pollard. If we have Justice Hill and everyone else has the exact same Dak, CD, Brandon Cooks, and Zay Flowers are likely, then just having Justice Hill outscore Tony Pollard by one, I mean, that could be the entire tournament winning.
Exactly. So now, all right. So now we have one, two, three, four Cowboys. We have three Ravens, one Chief, one Brown. optimally are we trying to add another Chief or another Brown here just in case they make the Super Bowl against our Cowboys?
Like I think so. But since we do have the four Dallas players, and we have the best Kansas City wide receiver, tight end. Sorry, Travis Kelsey, and we have
It's facts.
yeah, and then I mean, yeah, I can go either way on it. If it's a clear good player on one of those that completes one of those stacks, then I'll go for it. And the other question is, do I need help advancing out of the first round? Especially this mitten, I believe is 1 out of 6 advanced out of the first round.
Yeah.
But I think you're pretty strong at running back and the wide receiver, tight end position. So I could go either way.
Yeah, I guess the biggest question is, right, we have three guys here with a first round bye. That's probably a little more than most, than
Hmm.
average, I would think. So we might want one other player here. So the question is a secondary or tertiary Brown, Elijah Moore, secondary, tertiary Chief, Justin Watson? Are they more valuable to this build, which I don't know if they are with a 4-3 stack, than a guy who's not even guaranteed to make the playoffs, but if he does, is likely to contribute heavily in round one? Rashad White, Travis Etienne.
I mean, I would just look at you have CD and Rashi Rice, who are probably, I'm sure they're going to be projected to be two of the top 6 scorers in the wild card round.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, it's just how comfortable are we with Tony Pollard and Jerome Ford? I would personally be pretty comfortable having both of those guys.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I could go either way.
All right. Let's see here. So if we want another receiver, like Mike Evans is available, Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley is probably the safer. Let's go back to the New York Times thing here. So Jaguars 77%, and the Bucks are a coin flip basically. Calvin Ridley's not being drafted at all either. Same with Christian Kirk, who's likely to be back. So I like drafting those guys in the final round as well.
Yeah, I don't mind it.
Okay, I'll get Calvin in there.
Um, like I will say though, if these standings hold up and the Browns play Ridley in the first round, then you're guaranteed to lose a player. But on the other side of it, you're guaranteed to have one or two players in the next round too. So, there's drawback and pros to both sides.
Okay, yeah, that does make sense too. Okay, let's pull up this draft board as it's now completed. This went pretty well, I would think, for how we're trying to draft in best ball tournaments. Shout out to our social media manager, Derek, who's in the chat, says, hearing Justice Hill is elite. Funny story. Uh, Derek posted uh, a screenshot of some fabricated rankings after Justice Hill went off against the Dolphins, saying, update those best ball playoff rankings. And he had Justice Hill over Christian McCaffrey. But that was on his own personal Underdog account, and I guess he never switched the rankings back up. So he got auto drafted Justice Hill in round one tonight because he never changed the rankings just for that joke he made on social media. So Derek, I hope it's worth it.
I hope so too.
So I've been drafting these just whenever I can, Chuck, and I've got 33 entries just in the $5 so far. Just hammering them out, getting a sense of where players are going. I'll hop in another one here and get some more insight from you. Let me pull it up here. But it was interesting to see, like Tyreek Hill was an interesting ADP to me. He was going like 2 or 3 as last week, early this week, and finally people started to realize that, okay, Miami may not even make it out of round one, and they're certainly not Super Bowl favorites. So why is he going top 3 overall? That one to me never made really any sense.
Yeah, I've went back and forth on it between because the two big first pick. I mean, CD Lamb or Tyreek Hill, right?
Yeah,
And I don't know. I've been taking Lamar at number 2 recently. Maybe
yeah,
it's bad. Like in these new mittens, it's a lot different than drafting Lamar at number 2 in the Gauntlet because people have been getting Lamar in the Gauntlet and maybe even round 3
true.
early in the contest. And so these time box contests, taking Lamar early is not a bad thing if I think that's who's most likely to make the Super Bowl. But yeah, I've been thinking about this exact 1v1 CD Lamb versus Tyreek Hill, and we can get both their quarterbacks late. With Tyreek Hill, at least if we miss out on Mostert, we can still grab Devin A-Chain. But I'm having a tough time filling out the rest of the stack unless I get exactly Hill, Waddle, and A-Chain or Mostert. And a lot of times, even if I'm going for it, it's kind of difficult to pull off.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you can pull it off, but the question is, if Tyreek is worth the pick he's being drafted at, he commands so much of the volume in that offense. It's kind of like 3-man stacking Miami in DFS, 4-man stacking, right? It's harder for those other guys to get there. Yes, it's nice to have them throughout various rounds and maybe one goes off, but It's just if you get to the Super Bowl, I guess you're going to need them anyways, right? But if Tyreek goes for like 11 for 200 and two touchdowns in the Super Bowl, he's likely one of the only Dolphins, and the other team, unless it's a blowout, is likely putting up more players in the optimal lineup, if you know what I'm saying. So it just kind of feels weird to four-man stack Miami, especially them being not a favorite to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I think I drafted a three-man stack with Miami today, and I felt fine about it. I'm gonna have a complete. I had a couple combinations to have a full five-man roster in the Super Bowl anyway. But the other idea I had too was if we do take Tyreek early, it's not hard to get a full Philadelphia stack after that because, like I mentioned, they've been falling.
True.
And so if we want an elite team from the NFC that has a good chance of making the Super Bowl, that's not a bad route to go either, especially with the way ADPs line up.
That's true. So now Tyreek, we can get here at 5. I would argue taking him at 5 is much better than taking him at 2. Let's just try this. Like we've just talked about it. So I'm gonna take Tyreek and let's just see how this plays out.
Okay.
The other thing I've been trying to do, Chuck, is if I get 4, 5, 6, or even 2, 3, thinking about taking Debo or Ayuk there in the hopes that we get some weird draft and I end up with 3 San Francisco players that is such a rare outcome that I think it's worth trying to get as many of those guys early. Because and even if you overreach by a pick or two for Debo or Ayuk or whoever it is, it's not the worst thing in the world just because they are a favorite to win the Super Bowl. So uh, let's see here. Tyreek. Should we go with the Philly idea? Let's go with this we just talked about it. So I'll go AJ Brown. I'll go AJ Brown, and we can go to it later if we don't get Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay. But yeah, so let's just if Debo or Ayuk is there 4, 5, 6, take them. Hope that Ayuk comes back around or Purdy comes back around, and maybe Kittle falls to round 3 or something like that. Because then you have a really powerful San Francisco team that is just rare to get.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, even if you miss out on Purdy, it's not hard to get a good Josh Allen stack with Stephon Diggs. It's not. It is kind of difficult to get Patrick Mahomes with Rashi Rice and Isaiah Pacheco, or Travis Kelsey instead of Rashi Rice, whatever. And so you might have to get a little uncomfortable with your primary stack, but it's definitely doable.
For sure, for sure. All right, we're waiting here for a couple picks, and Chuck, I had the idea. I think maybe after playoffs are over, maybe we'll sit down, you and I, and we'll discuss your sweat, your 20K win, some of the best ball stuff you learned because as this season ends, we're gonna roll right into 2024 best ball season and continue with these types of videos. So maybe you and I will sit down, have a little interview and a little strategy, but also just a little celebration discussion for your nice little 2023 season. I guess before we even get to that, do you consider this a successful season considering you won 20K?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, me and you talked about it. It's probably a 1% outcome, if not better, for everyone that plays best ball. And so, like I did mention, I was so close to the next tier up. And when you're that high in the rankings, each pay jump is so significant.
Yeah.
But I mean, at the beginning of the day, I was only guaranteed $500 in that contest, walk away with 20K. And then we had a good finish in the Best Ball Mania as
Yeah, we
well.
did.
That four-man stream that we had, we finished top 100 there. And while the payout wasn't significant, it was $5,000. It's still nice. And it just like 7 of my 8 finals teams did have Amari Cooper, and so that was a big deal. But I had a big lean on Amari Cooper. We had leans on Amon-Ra, CeeDee Lamb preseason. And so the seasons that our leans are the guys you need in the playoffs, we're going to have 8 teams through to the finals. And then maybe next year, my leans don't perform in week 16. I have 0 teams in the finals. And so I was just really lucky that variance kind of smacked me in the face.
Or we have such great leans on Puka and Kyron that you get so many teams through that you're eventually going to squeak some through to the finals.
It's so funny talking with people in real life, like my friends, about where Kyron Williams is going to go, and I tell them he's a first rounder next year, and they think I'm insane.
Nah, dude.
And then you go online, and I'm seeing him like early mock drafts. I've seen him as high as like 6. So
Yep. I've seen the same thing. Shout out to RJ Rat 84, by the way, great PGA DFS player. He's in our draft. Would not be shocked if he does not draft optimally here, given how sharp he is. All right, it's on us. So see, George Kittle fell here. So T Jigger 04 got Debo and George Kittle. So that's pretty sick, and that's what I was talking about there. All right, so Tyreek, AJ Brown, Hurts went. Now we're trying to stack Miami, I assume.
yeah, I think so. I mean, it's the only logical option, right? Because we already burned a pick on AJ Brown, unless we want to go with one of the lesser AFC teams, but all their quarterbacks are already gone.
Right. So I will go Mostert here. Ideally, his ankle, whatever's holding him back, he's good for the playoffs. So we got Mostert here and Tyreek. We're gonna try to grab Tua. Let's just queue him up here so I don't forget about him. Jalen Waddle we could grab as well. So the question, I mean, what I really like here is you could also go Amon Ra, and now you have a double Philly Detroit opportunity in a Miami Super Bowl.
Yeah, and I love that. Those two players specifically with the standings as they are right now, Philly can play Detroit in the conference finals, and
Okay.
then you can have both of AJ Brown and Amon Ra uh, in the third round, which is massive if you're trying to get to that final round, 1 out of 10.
Totally. All right, so we got Tua Waddle. I'm just gonna queue up some Detroit players. This is what I like doing for myself. I do this in regular season best ball as well when I'm trying to stack. Just get these guys queued up. That way I can keep them in mind. Don't forget about them. Who we got for Philly? DeAndre Swift. Let's not forget Achan for Miami. Goddard, Gainwell, sure. All right.
And this is something I think we should be doing in every draft. I'm guilty of not doing it every time, but there's times that I have not noticed that I can complete the stack, but I'm drafting someone else, and the ADPs don't match up where he's going to be available next. But I think this is really important to just have everyone on your stacks queued up, and
Yep.
just don't auto pick in case you don't want to.
Exactly. Exactly. Here, so let me see. What with only starting one running back, obviously there's still a flex, right? Pairing Mostert and Achan together, or like I guess it's different because it's so late, but Cleveland like Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford, those types of guys. Does it make much sense? Is it negligible?
I think it's fine. Kind of like what we were talking about with regular season best ball, drafting two teammates. Let's say they ping pong playoff weeks. Achan goes off in week 1, and so all the Achan teams are in week 2, and then you have Mostert who goes off in week 2, and just
Okay.
having both of them where a lot of people aren't.
Totally. All right. So here's a situation we were talking about earlier where we wait on the quarterback at the turn. This guy, PS Foreign Star, great name, looks like he's drafting optimally. Does not seem like the guy who would draft Tua without a Miami Dolphin and is already building a San Francisco Buffalo stack. So I think there I can wait on Tua to the next pick.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. And if you took to it, yeah, yeah, it seems good. I'm a little behind on the video. Sorry.
Oh, all good, all good. Okay, so the question here is Waddle or Gibbs, right? Gibbs completes the Detroit stack. Waddle helps complete the Miami 4 stack. What do you prefer?
Most of the time, I would go for completing the 4 stack, but like you said, if like Tyreek Hill just hogs like how much of the usage on this offense, and so taking a bet that Waddle isn't gonna perform in the later rounds and that they're gonna play Detroit in the Super Bowl, I kind of like it. And I've seen Waddle fall enough too that I don't mind it. But since we have to take two as well,
Yeah.
I can go either way.
Okay, I ended up with going Gibbs, and I've seen Waddle fall too, just with the injury concerns with him dealing, excuse me, with whatever he's dealing with. So we'll go with Tua here. Maybe Waddle falls. If not, I don't mind taking a Cedric Wilson, Durham Smythe. That's the Noah Gray situation you were talking about earlier, where if if someone else has this combo, God forbid, we have the fifth player, and they get into the end zone and get a couple catches, that moves us up the pay scale. So
And then if you did want to go with Waddle, similar to regular season best ball, I'm fine taking the second quarterback on the team. If we want a Detroit running back and we miss out on Gibbs, we can just take Dave Montgomery, and I don't
true.
feel like it. I mean, it's a little bit different, but if we can complete the stack, then to me it's fine.
Okay, so I end up getting Tua. Our guy at the turn did not take a quarterback, so now we have Tua, Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Jameer Gibbs, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown. Going to look for a second Philly player here and probably complete it with a scrub Miami guy at the end. Is it worth scrub Miami guy at the end as compared to secondary Baltimore guy? When you're looking at the quality of the team here, they make the Super Bowl. Everyone's in play still. That's my line of thinking.
Yeah, and like I've been talking about, like Gallup or MVS, similar like Cedric Wilson catching a touchdown, could be pretty powerful if no one else on Miami has any production, and you have that stack. And I don't think this team has to worry about advancing out of the first round. You have three of the best possible wide receiver tight ends.
That's a good point. That is a very good point. All right. I mean, maybe Waddle makes it. We'll see. He's still slipping here, so we'll try to get Waddle if we can. Uh, already have two Detroit players. I'll probably just get rid of these Detroit guys for now. We're still looking at Goddard and Gainwell potentially for a two-man Philly stack. Again, if you guys have questions, let us know in the chat. If you're watching this on replay, you can go ahead and drop a comment. We'll probably do a couple more of these, ideally, once the brackets are finalized. the week ahead of the wild card round. So if you want something else, other type of content, you want to see more strategy or specific ideas in these videos, go ahead and let us know. And again, at the end of the season, we'll do an interview with Chuck here, kind of a recap of Best Ball 2023 and get his takes. So, Chuck, how many teams are you planning on drafting overall for Best Ball playoffs?
I'm 24 in right now. I'm waiting to see what contests the other sites drop before I decide how much of my bankroll I want to allocate to these. And like I said, since so many people got, I don't know, combos that are impossible to draft now in the gauntlet, I'm not sure I'm going to draft any in that $25 contest. But these 20 maxes, like the one that popped up today, it's already half full. So I'm probably going to try to max that out tonight because I'm sure it'll be full by tomorrow.
True.
And then this one that you're drafting right now, the Mitten 3, I don't know. Is our edge bigger in these that only advance 1 out of 6? Like your team seems like a pretty good favorite to advance out of this pod, since
True.
it's only 1 out of 6.
Yeah, that's a good question. Uh, I still think so, right? I still think it's a pretty big edge in this format because, yes, a little less likely to get through, but if we get through, our teams are so much more powerful. We almost got Waddle sneaking all the way through, but of course, like I said, RJ Rat, who is sharp, did end up scooping him here in round 7. I am going to take Goddard, who is past ADP. That completes the Philly 2-man stack for us. And it looks like we'll be going with a Miami scrub to close it out. Let's see. Should we go for another NFC 2-man stack no matter how unlikely it is? I'm thinking, let's see here, Tampa Bay or Green Bay. Our guys from Green Bay that we talked about, no one's taking.
I would, yeah, I don't mind either way, and I would probably lean towards Green Bay since there's no Dallas players on this team. Assuming that they end up playing each other in the first round, it just gives us more outs to have a full roster in the second round. And on the other side of it, Green Bay is just a little bit more unique, especially. Uh, we're not going to know for a few more days. This contest is going to be pretty full, and so even if Green Bay's locked up a spot, I still don't know if people are going to be drafting them as often as they should be drafted compared
True.
to the Tampa Bay guys, especially.
True. Okay, so I went Aaron Jones here. I'll probably end up with. It sounds like Christian Watson is coming back, so I'll take him or Jaden Reed, whoever, and then close it out with the Miami scrub.
Man, Jaden Reed was the only player I needed to fade on in that Sunday night game
Dude.
to stay in the top 20, and got
Naturally
2
scores 30.
touchdowns. Then he just said, "I'm done for the game."
You can't make it up, dude. I mean, you were in a great position to begin with, so you can't really complain too much. But you would just like the guy not to score 30 before he gets injured.
Yeah, right. Like, just don't score 2 touchdowns. 1 touchdown was fine, but he's gonna go pretty high, I think, in best ball drafts for next season, like 4th, 5th round, maybe. Where
Probably,
Christian
dude.
Watson was going last year.
Yeah, man, he's fucking Debo. They're just using him all around everywhere. It's out of control, dude. It's like it's the same frustration when you don't play him and he scores a rushing touchdown or one of those bullshit pop passes. You're like, all right, this can't keep happening. Surely, keeps happening. Surely, but he's a fantastic player. Certainly was undervalued coming into the year. A lot of people didn't think that with Dobbs and Watson and whoever else that he could rise to the top. But talent rises, man, and you know that as well as any. And people in dynasty leagues know that as well. So draft for talent, not for depth chart.
Yeah, and he was not on my draft radar last season. I got a couple percent. I did have him on one of my finals teams on Underdog, but it was just random chance that a guy I was not on at all was there and performed in the finals.
I feel like that does work that way. Whether it's uh, in DFS too, right? You might have a couple of percent of someone that you're fading or intentionally going underweight on, and then towards the end of the slate, you look up and your top performing lineup has that player. You're like, how does this how does this possibly happen? All right,
Yeah, and I'm just happy to have that share, right?
yeah. All right, I'm gonna go Christian Watson here. So now we got 2 Green Bay guys. We'll close it out with the Miami scrub of our choice. The question here is right. So Tua, he has had some down games. They are prone to having multi-touchdown games from Mostert and or Achan. Is this a potential or a candidate for a 2 quarterback roster, or still no in your minds?
Um, I mean, for me, there's just I wouldn't personally, unless I thought that it would give me another combo or two of a Super Bowl possibility. But since you drafted correctly, I don't think I would.
Like, how bad is it to take Goff here, who lasted to the very final round, and we have 2 other Detroit players?
Like, I don't think it's awful. I mean, considering the other players that you could draft, what are the chances that one of them contributes, especially in the first round,
Right.
since your team is stacked, right? And even in the second round. And so on a team like this, I don't mind it as much since we need no help at running back and no help at wide receiver, tight end.
I drafted Goff by accident because I was too busy talking. God damn it. I meant to draft Cedric Wilson. This was going to be a winner. So if Cedric Wilson catches 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowl, we can blame this moment. So didn't end up with Goff, and we will. This will be Exhibit A of drafting 2 quarterbacks who maybe end up in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and with the 1 out of 6, I mean, it does give you another out at one of the positions getting out of the first round if in case you somehow need it.
Okay. That was devastating because that was going perfectly up until pick number 10. So, all right, guys, 10:25. That will close out this best ball stream. Chuck, let's talk for a couple more minutes. If you guys have final questions, get them in. But any strategies or angles we haven't talked about in this video that people should be considering?
No, I mean, so it'll be a lot more clear. The thing that I want to focus on once the final seedings are set after next weekend, the advantage to drafting now is maybe you get some combos that we won't be able to get after this weekend. But just really trying to if you can have 8 players that are going to be reasonably available in the conference finals, if those teams make it, then I just think it's very strong. Because, like I said, half the teams are going to be dead in the finals. A lot of the teams are even going to be dead in the conference finals because we don't have to draft players from the team that wins. We just need players from the team that gets there, right?
True. That is very true. And so I've noticed, and you and I have talked about this too. Let's just say you draft a 4-man AFC stack. Are you really not drafting that many AFC players in addition to it? Because obviously they can still meet in the conference finals, but ideally you want that team to make the Super Bowl. So you're essentially you're going to lose some players in that aspect. I guess just talk to me about if you 4-man stack, 5-man stack a team from one conference. What is the strategy for drafting players also in that conference?
I think the only time I've done it at all is if I have a full Baltimore or San Francisco stack, or even 3 of those guys, and I think I might need help getting out of the first round, and I'm only doing it from teams that could play those guys in the conference finals.
Gotcha. Okay, and just off record, or not off record, but offhand, do you know what the winning lineups looked like last year? Maybe not necessarily where players were drafted, but what the winning lineups were consisted of?
Um, I don't remember. I mean, just off the top of my head, I imagine it was Hertz with would it have been AJ Brown or Devonta
Probably.
Smith?
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah,
I honestly, I don't even remember what last year's Super Bowl was, to be honest. So far ago.
yeah. Well, because last year was so weird because it was a 1 seed versus 1 seed, and that possibility. I mean, it's the most likely possibility for this year, right?
Yeah.
Probably is every year. Baltimore versus San Francisco, and if that happens, it's kind of like, all right, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel versus Zay Flowers, Isaiah Likely, who's going to outscore who, and just given how much higher San Francisco players are getting drafted, uh, it's I don't know. I haven't been drafting any teams that are going for the 1 seed matchup just because it's really hard to get out of the first round, and with the way ADPs
Mm,
are, I haven't been able to do it. I would do it. I would try it in a contest at Advance 2, but contest at Advance 1. And like, if you get it through, you have a good chance because no one else is doing it. But I just think it's really difficult, and so low advance rate, but probably a high chance to win if you actually do manage to get it through.
yeah, that was just really quickly. Like on that note, if you manage to draft San Francisco and Baltimore, right? 4, 5, 6 guys or whatever it is from that game. Obviously, it's really tough to get either Lamar or Purdy and one of the top options from San Francisco. Sometimes it's impossible. Like, what happens if, let's just say Purdy busts, right? Scores like 10, 15 points in the Super Bowl. Debo scores 30. Ayuk scores 20. I don't know if that's possible, but Flower scores a bunch. You don't get Lamar. Like, can a lineup with no quarterback win, right? Can if you have 4 of the highest scoring players in the game, but both quarterbacks underwhelm, is that possible for a 0 quarterback lineup to win? Or if even if you have 5 guys from San Francisco, Baltimore, but you have Purdy who puts up 10, is that enough because it's so hard to get that combination?
Yeah, just those 10 fantasy points are so valuable. And like, I'm trying to think about maybe something weird happens in the previous rounds where all those guys underperform. So they're just severely underowned in the finals.
True.
And maybe in that situation. But other than that, I mean, because like I said, like if I get 3 points from Michael Gallup or whatever, I know I keep saying Michael Gallup, but just whatever wide receiver
You gotta
three at
stop
the end
trying
of
to
the
talk it
draft,
into existence, Chuck. It's not gonna happen. Gallup is not happening.
like 3 fantasy points could be worth whatever first place is in the contest.
It's true. That's very true. It's very, very true. So, all right, guys, that'll do it for this discussion. You'll see us back probably multiple times next week, whether it's me or Chuck or some combination of guys from Occupy Fantasy, because we do want to get a couple more of these drafts in, especially once the seedings are finalized. So make sure you subscribe to the video. You'll get notified when those videos will be out next week. DFS is this weekend, so Saturday slate preview video up on Friday, main slate video up on Saturday, and of course all the content at OccupyFantasy.com. So for Chuck, you can follow him on Twitter at ChuckSilverDFS. I'm at BrianJesterFF. Thanks everybody for watching. Again, if you have any final questions, go ahead and comment below, or we love having discussions in our Discord server, so OccupyFantasy.com/Discord. Thanks and good night.
Go Rams.